Hi, friends, and welcome to class. I want to read something to you as we get started. So, when the simple, though sublime, statement is made by a woman or a man that the Lord is my shepherd, it immediately applies a profound yet practical working relationship between human being and their makers. Human beings and their maker. It links a lump of common clay to divine destiny. It means a mere mortal becomes the cherished object of divine diligence. I'm going to read that again. Listen to it. It links a lump of common clay to divine destiny. It means a mere mortal becomes the cherished object of divine diligence. This thought alone should stir my spirit, quicken my own sense of awareness, and lend enormous dignity to myself and the individual. To think that God in Christ is deeply concerned about me as a particular person immediately gives a great purpose and enormous meaning to my short sojourn upon this planet. These are the words of Philip Keller in his book, A Shepherd Looks at the 23rd Psalm. I recommend it. In these words, we find that we are the cherished objects of divine diligence, that a shepherd is leading us onward. When I read something like that, when I think about the calling from above you conversation that we were just in, I think of the Creator with a posture of expectation. That there's something planted inside of me that is being redeemed, claimed. Someone's coming back after it. There's value there. I have become the object of divine diligence. A few years ago, I got to spend time on the Masai Mara, just beyond Nairobi, out in the fields, working with a group of leaders and doctoral students who would spend a week or so out with the leaders and the Maasai leaders. And I remember one morning waking up early, following the young boys who had the duty, they were the shepherds. You see, the Maasai believe that God has given them all the land, all the animals on the land. It's their cultural right to them. Now, some might say that that makes them thieves when they go to claim the land, but that's not the way the Maasai experience life through their worldview. These young boys got up early because the duty passes with shepherds from day to day. And they were about to take the goats out to go find pasture, find grass. These two boys began to do the work of getting the young kids onto their mother's teat, cleaning their rear ends, which had become soiled through the night where they lay and where they relieved themselves, and readying these kids for success, if you will, these baby goats. And I watched these young boys who could be no older than 8 or 9 attend to these little lives, mostly with a stick and mostly with cleaning. They were the objects of human diligence that even a kid could give. And yet I could see there was a sense of bond, that they didn't hesitate. They knew these animals. They knew their way around these animals. What does it mean for us, common lumps of clay, if you will, to become objects of divine diligence? Well, in the above you conversation that we are now building upon, we shift our attention to the within you conversation. That there's something planted within you that someone is distracted by. Somebody wants something. Someone loves you. Let's talk about love for a minute. Do you have a good definition of love? What's love got to do with it is the way Tina Turner put it. Love's a many splendored thing. Love lifts us up where we belong. All we need is love, says all the songwriters. Well, what is it? Who has a working, practical definition? The absence of this clarity explains the slovenliness of our living. I'm going to say that again. Yep. Did Russ just say that? Yes. the unfocused nature of what we believe about love explains a lot about our living. You see, I believe God's on a mission to get our loves straightened out. That this whole walk of faith is a story about getting our loves affixed to objects which will improve us rather than lower us. We've got lower loves and higher loves. In our conversation, we begin with God saying he loves humanity. He loves you. He loves me. What does that mean? About 35 years ago, I sat in a chapel when the marriage and family professor was up to speak. He was the guest of the senior class. And this marriage and family professor, his name's Jack Sharp, Southeastern University. He had been a Pentecostal preacher for 50 years. He had been a marriage family therapist for about 38 years. And he had been a marriage family professor for about 36 years. So when he talked about relationships and disorder and dysfunction, you leaned in. There was a person with wisdom teaching this forensic course around marriage and family, and it was the basis of my counseling studies. And he said something in that chapel service about the definition of love that I've never recovered from. He defined it for me in a way that gave practical handles. I could now respond to Tina Turner and say, what's love got to do with it? Tina, it's got everything to do with it. Here's his definition. Write this down. I'll do it a couple times. We know that we love a thing when an object has become so valuable that it begins to exert a fundamentally controlling influence over us. Think about that. We know that we love a thing. This is after the fact, right? We know that we love a thing when an object has become so valuable that it begins to exert a fundamentally controlling influence upon us. You see, love dictates what we pay attention to. Love dictates what we pay for. Love dictates who we spend time with. Love dictates the heights that we can soar to. Love can lower us until we are dragging ourselves with the morals of alley cats. You see, love follows the attention upon which we invest, where we invest our attention. And the piece that I read from Philip Keller and the Nairobi Maasai boys remind me that someone has set their affection on me and you and humanity. Someone's got a distraction case, an ADD case that keeps coming back to us. We're the objects of divine diligence, mere lumps of clay. So as we make our shift from the above you conversation and all the difficulty it is to talk concretely about something that's in a black box that nobody's ever seen or known, and the lengths I had to go through to kind of provoke the kind of conversation, I'm aware that many of you don't like Pascal. I get it. But I'm not trying to teach worldview. I'm not trying to teach cosmology. I'm trying to provoke a conversation that requires you to be doctoral learners, that requires you to be critical thinkers, to be able to walk around an object that's external to you and not be offended by it by virtue that it's not you, but that you bring your critical resources and let it provoke awareness. If I could take you to Italy, we would do the same thing. Italy, for most of you, would not be your country, so you would probably see something of your own country more clearly because you went away from it and saw Italy. So if you're expecting Russell to lay out books and texts and films and assignments that keep you in your comfort zones, well, that's not called education or learning. That's called coddling you and keeping you in a place of your prejudices. Instead, I am here to provoke you to see if you can develop more of a comparative and a cognitively more complex way of being in the world. And it's not only drinking your cup of tea. You see, he who believes that their mama's bread is the best in the world, or your worldview, or your approach, or the conclusions you've come to theologically, unaware that they're based on your own cultural suppositions as well. that they're marred beneath your story as well. That he or she that thinks their mother's bread is the best in the world has not traveled far from home. And what I'm interested in this course is for you to take 10,000 trips away from your own home and to come back with clarity and wisdom restored and a sense of generosity for the human community, since God has placed something in them that he is seeking to redeem. So we shift from the above you to the we within you, developing the leader within you. Whereas the last time we talked about your calling, the destiny shaping processes that come from above you, now we shift to your constitution, the God shaping processes within your core. And for this week, I've chosen a few films that might provoke us and get us going into this. I've chosen some texts that I think that you will enjoy, or certainly will provoke you critically. This week, I asked the question, how does your body show up when things are uncertain? Now, this class is happening in the middle of 2020. And anyone who's awake knows what fills the television screens, what fills your news feed, what fills the conversations. We're recovering from a pandemic or going through a pandemic. Racial unrest is back on its center stage inside of the United States. And a global movement around the dignity of humans is now in the mouths of people who care to take up the conversation. A provocation is in the world that is making us think about what is within us. I believe that the conversations that we're having this week will inform the perspectives that you have and give you a different unit of analysis through all the movement, through all of the necessary stirring, through all the noise. And it asks the question, what makes up a hero? I mean, limbically, in the bodily, how is it that some people throw themselves into the fray when others turn away and run away? Some move to the streets where violence is possible against their persons, but they would leverage that body, that animal brain that says it's fight, flee, or freeze, that they would move into the fight mode with their bodies and say, there's a gap, there's a breach, human dignity is at risk, and I'm awakened and moving forward. I'm moving towards it. I'm running towards the battle lines. That's a brain following a body. So how does your body show up when things are uncertain? Do you cleave? Do you leave and go towards it? Do you weave things together? That's what our conversation is about this week. I've chosen The Lion King, Saving Mr. Banks, and Henry V, Kenneth Branagh's version of Henry V from the 90s. I think it's 93. Pick one of these, not all of them, but pick one of these. Enjoy with your family. And ask the question, how is the protagonist's body showing up in the story? How have their comfort needs, their physical needs, the way they move themselves through space, who they couple up with and tribal up with? What is the story of the body, and how does it produce responses that get us interested in hard things? That measure our mettle, M-E-T-T-L-E, our mettle, what we're made of, our constitution. My friends, what gets shaped in the leader? That's our dominant probe. What is getting shaped inside of you? If it's only your exegetical skills to read the scripture, stand up on Sunday and repeat and stir up what is there, then I would say you have an incomplete education and an incomplete preparation. You live in a body. The created order was God's idea. Its diversity, seen in flowers and pigs and elephants and giraffes, is seen in the human community. Male and female created he them. Skin was his idea, and God put skin in the game from the beginning with eventually his seed and eventually a boy who when he arrived, his skin wasn't exactly accepted. John 1:14. It's all right. It's been that way for a long, long time, that our differences are real differences. And yet, bodies are at the center of the story. The within you is within a you, a body, a persona, a self that moves through the world that people are moving and working through, working with. So what exactly is being shaped within? How is your body engaged in the spiritual development, the social development, the cultural development, the economic and historical development? I hope that as you make sense of The Lion King, Saving Mr. Banks, Henry V, pay attention to the flashbacks, that you will have some sense of a growing answer. I hope you engage the critical resources of Savoda for this week, and then some of the articles that I lay out for you next week, Tobert's reading. I think that you're going to help us all inside of your conversations to have some sense of what is the within you that God is developing. And as you shift to next week, our next module, the beside you conversations, it might suggest to you some things that you're going to find yourself attending to as you become more competent on how to work with humans, people beside you, people around you, people among you, and people eventually who'll go beyond you. I look forward to this conversation. I'll see you in the classroom. Do your dead level best to press yourself into a wrestling match with who you are and what has been given to you. I look forward to the conversation we have together.